it up here.
Oh,
Right. Welcome, everyone. Hello. Welcome to our second workshop in the Shake the Table Feminist Leadership in College series. Thank you all for being here. The goal of this program is to discuss the role of identity and intersectionality in leadership development, how gender socialization shapes women in leadership, the effects of stereotypes and prejudice, and degendering leadership. Anyone interested in gender identity in leadership development is welcome, and we're so happy to see you all today. So thank you for being here. I'm Deb Orval, she, her pronouns, and I'll be serving as your moderator today. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. Please grab some pizza before we begin. We have a series of questions that will be asking the presenters, but we'll leave time at the end for you to ask questions as well. Keep an open mind during our program today and think about how gender has shaped your leadership experience too. Let's go ahead and get started. Can I ask everyone on the panel to please share your name, pronouns, role on campus, and what motivated you to say yes to serving on this panel? Okay, so we start at the end.
Well, hi, my name is Julia Taylor, pronouns she, her. I am the executive director for Campaign Council, and I said yes to being on this panel. One, because I think it's always a very important discussion to have, to reflect on yourself, but also to reflect with others, but also to bring in. So I'm an aerospace engineering major, which is not a very popular major with women or women identifying folk. So all those things combined, just really awesome.
Hi, my name is Maddie Mead. My pronouns are she, her, and they, them. I currently work for the Career Exploration and Development Office on campus as a career peer, and I also work for the Academic Success Center as an academic coach. More notably, I was on the Kent State Women's Lacrosse team for 3 years and was elected captain within that position and held multiple leadership roles on different committees there too. I said yes because I never reflected on this question myself. And like after leaving the lacrosse team and kind of exploring my own gender identity, thinking about how it relates to my leadership, I just thought was so interesting, and I really wanted to be here for the conversation. So that's why I said yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Winnie Bush and I am the program coordinator for the Women's Center. I was also a graduate student here at Kent State University. So my motivation for joining this, oh sorry, my pronouns are she, her, hers. My motivation, I think for me, I've never thought about how gender or gender norms like affects my leadership skills. So I just wanted to, I think it's an honor and like a privilege to like speak about my, like the different places I've been and where I'm from, but it's also good to kind of learn from everyone as well. So I'm excited.
Hello everyone, I'm G. My pronouns are she, her, or any, I don't really care. I am a senior educational studies major and I have a minor in leadership. And I've had a bunch of different leadership positions on campus, a lot of things with student success programs, like a leader training course trainer, flash guide, amongst other things. Currently, I'm an intern in the LGBTQ+ center on campus. And I said yes because Haley and Jess asked me a couple minutes ago to fill in for someone, so bear with me, I'm not super prepared on it, but also it's definitely important to reflect on like being a woman or gender non-conforming in leadership, especially like out of college.
All right, well, thank you everyone for sharing. Our first question is from Maddie and Julia. How do you define leadership and what traits do you find most admirable in leaders?
Okay, can you repeat the question?
Yes. How do you define leadership and what traits do you find most admirable in leaders?
Yeah, so I think my definition of leadership is, I guess I would say goal-oriented, no, that's not what I want to say. Like goal-oriented, like goals, that we'll just say that. And then like based in respect, I lost all my words, I'm so sorry. what's the word for like clear, transparent. So like respect, transparency, and growth. I think that's what I define my leadership as, and I define leadership in general. Obviously, like you're leading for a specific goal, a like thing that your organization is trying to achieve. So being focused on that while also like taking into account that these are people within this organization and they have other stuff going on in their lives. I think for me, the traits that I find most admirable, I'm definitely right now on like a rebel feminist kick. So like the women who are like super courageous, like so determined, and like their whole life is like centered around what they believe in and what they value. I really find those people super inspiring. And then you also have on the flip side, like the approachability of a leader. I think that's super important too. So those are my kind of traits. I'd say like courageous, determined, but also approachable and respectful.
So kind of hit a lot of the same points. The biggest thing for me that you kind of said was about the people. So I always kind of reflect back on what my biggest focus is right now, which is like my degree. So in STEM, you kind of see this trend of there's a lot of different people who are very good at some task or some ability, and they're very smart people. And then when it comes to communicating that, or say if you're the lead of a group, you kind of need the skills to communicate that. And then at the end of the day, your group are also people. And if your group isn't feeling taken care of, then they're not going to fully respect you as a leader. And if that doesn't work out, if they don't respect you fully as a leader, then it kind of shows in their work and it affects the entire group. So there is this kind of cycle dynamic. So ultimately, I would think the ability to understand how to take care of people, take care of your people, is the biggest thing, because nearly anyone can be very good at a task or at math or at evaluating a certain whatever, or experimentation. Those are skills that you can learn over time. But to be able to lead or manage people, that's something that you really have to be really intentional on.
All right, thank you, Maddie and Julie. Julia, this next question is for G and Winnie. How do you see gender identity playing a role in leadership traits or styles?
You're first, me go first.
Go for it. Oh, you want to go?
Me go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Repeat the question.
Yes. How do you see gender identity playing a role in leadership traits or styles?
I wanted to say, I think for me, I think it plays a significant role. I will say, I think a lot of my leadership, I don't look at it through the lens of my gender. I think I look at it through a cultural lens. But that, I think for me, is because culture and gender is so interfused with where I come from. So I made some notes, so bear with me. So like, for example, when we think of like women in leadership in Nigeria, people typically think of them, Nigeria is where I'm from, it's in West Africa. But people think of women in leadership as people oriented. So, you know, like someone had talked about, you know, caring for the whole person, or we think of women as being collaborative. So just making sure that everyone's kind of a part of the decision making. We also think of women as like we participate and listen. They don't see women as, I don't know, like they don't see women as the core focus, like women as leaders in a sense. Whereas when we think of the men, we think of men as people who take charge, who take control. We think of men as like they give you the instruction, you get the work done. They're not collaborative in a sense. And also it's like men, when we think of men in leadership in Nigeria, it's also like they just give you the instructions and you do what they say. They don't expect feedback. Whenever, you know, when we think of women, like I said, it's more collaborative. It's more democratic. That's how I describe it. They want you to be part of the process and treating you like a family, is how they say, whereas Nigerian men are not like that. I think the last point I wanted to mention was just like, Nigerian men in leadership are seen as transactional, like you get the work done, that's it. There's no like back and forth relationship. So yeah, so that's how in the context, and like I said, for me, I see leadership through a cultural lens more than through a gender lens.
I think for me, I would definitely second a lot of that of like women in leadership or like gender non-conforming people typically are more focused on like the person and really like building people up instead of just taking charge of something, which taking charge of things is also great. I tend to do that a lot, but then people call me bossy, but you know, but yeah, I think that I personally really admire empathy in people. So I try to embody that when I am leading other students or a group of whoever it may be, to truly lead with that understanding and empathy and compassion for the person as a whole, not just here's your list of things, do them, and to really like give support and build that person up.
All right, thank you both for your responses. Maddie, this next question is for you. How would you describe yourself as a leader? How would others describe you?
Yeah, so I like struggle with this question a lot because I think my leadership style is very covert in a way. I was talking with my friend to prepare for this question. She was actually like my co-captain, and I was like, how would you describe my leadership style? And she was like, your presence. And I was just like, okay, like, I mean, that's like super abstract, but thank you like for your thoughts. So kind of what I got out of it was just like, I lead by example, but also in a way that's like a hype person. I think that's my leadership style. It's like hard work, determined, like get this done, but also like let's have fun while we're doing it and like support each other and lift one another up and be like, yeah, that was awesome. Like, can you teach me how to do that? That's my leadership style and how other people would describe it.
Awesome. Thank you for your response. All right, now, Julia, tell us a bit about your experience as a woman in STEM. Do you think that your gender identity plays a role in the way your peers interact with you? Why not?
So kind of a loaded question, but I love this question at the same time because it's so like wide. So yes and no. Does it affect how my peers interact with me? So just as a little background, the aerospace engineering major is very small. So I'm in the same class of the same 17-ish people for the past 3 years. Our first year was more general, but so by now, if I were to walk into the classroom, then it's kind of like, oh, I'm just another person because we've grown close and they've known or they've gotten to know how I work, what I know. Same thing for me with them. So it's not so much as like I walk into the room and go, who's she? But there was a trial, like I describe it as like a trial run during the first year where you kind of figure out who's quote fit, I guess, for the major, for the classes. And even still, there was maybe four women in our major when we started out. I'm the last remaining one. But you kind of go through this period of time where they're like, all right, well, are you cool? Are you not cool? Like, how do I talk to you? Like, I don't know. So it is that kind of stereotypical kind of interaction where you're like, oh, are you one of the guys or are you one of the girls? But as I look back now and I'm reflecting on, like in my capstone class, how I'm the leader in my capstone project, and it's not so much as, oh, like we need to filter what she says or we need to filter what we say. It's not like that at all, actually, which I'm very thankful for. But I do understand in the environments where you have larger classes that you can't warm up to people or get to know them quite as intimately. So I wish I had a more solid solution for people in those positions because it really shouldn't be that way. And you should meet everyone the same and have everyone like the same chance to prove themselves in a way. I think I answered that question.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan. All right, Winnie, you've been able to see what it's like for women in leadership in different countries. Tell us a bit about that experience and how leadership and gender roles differ across borders.
A loaded question again. Julia. I would say that I think what is seen as effective leadership or good leadership definitely depends on the country you're in or the culture you're from. For example, like being from Nigeria and living in Nigeria. I lived in Nigeria for 16 years before I moved to the US. I didn't see a lot of women in positions of power. I typically saw women being assistants or people who cleaned the places, or they were more in supportive roles. They were not leaders, the way we define leaders, and even when I visited, I think it was a flip for me, like when I came to the US and seeing all these powerful women doing incredible things. Or when I went to London, like women were like, it was a shock. Because I know even like I have the conversation with my dad, because like my dad owns his own media, like he owns a media house, like a radio, TV station, and all of that, and he doesn't have any woman in positions of power. Like his assistant, his personal assistant, is a woman, and all of that. So I think it's been interesting to see for sure. So I think for me, what I'm liking is just seeing that it's changing. Like I like the fact that we are having this conversation. I like the fact that we even have, like the Women's Center, for example, we have a program called Elect Her, where we're trying to help encourage and motivate, people like y'all, people like us, to kind of run for positions of power. So that's what I'm excited for. And I think a lot of things are changing, even in my country now. Like we have this lady, her name is called Ngozi Iweala. I feel like I'm pronouncing it wrong. You guys, I think I'm Americanized. But she was the first woman to be appointed to the World Trade Organization. We also have like Kafia, and she was the first woman pilot in Nigeria. So things are changing. And I think it's a result of conversation. It's a result of us becoming westernized, is what Nigerians would call it. But yeah, so I really do think it depends. Like when you go to London or when you go to, like, depending on what country you're in, effective leadership or good leadership is viewed differently. I think in Nigeria, it is still a struggle. It's still tough to see women in positions of power. I don't think we have enough. I don't know that we'll ever have enough because things are going really slow. I actually found something interesting when I was looking this up. So they actually did a survey. It's called the Gender Social Norms Index Survey. And it was a survey of like most of the people in Nigeria. So 8 out of 10 women and 9 out of 10 men believe that men make better leaders than women. Even the men also said that they don't believe that it's essential for women to have the same rights as them. So that's why I'm like, things are moving forward, but I think it's going to take time to be better. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. G, you serve as an advocate for those that hold many different identities on our campus. What advice do you have for creating an inclusive experience for all leaders in our community as it relates to gender identity?
Good question. I would definitely recommend taking advantage of all of the different identity centers on campus. There's a lot. There's the SMC, the LGBTQ+ Center, the Women's Center, all kinds of different things. And I know because I work in the LGBTQ+ Center that there is such a strong community in there. And there's people that come in every day just to do their homework for an hour. And we have a relationship with all the guests that come in. The interns that work there have a super close relationship. So step into that community or whatever community you may be a part of and just build those relationships. Like, I know if you come into the center, we may seem a little scary because we're very chaotic and laughing and loud and all the time, just all over the place. But like, step out of your comfort zone, meet some other people in that community, and like absorb things. Like when I meet new people, I just like to like absorb all of their knowledge and like their life experiences, and like it just gives me a broader view of things. So I hope that answers that.
Great, thank you, G. Julia and Maddie, what did recreational activities as a child and young adult teach you about leadership? How do you think these lessons affect your leadership journey? Example, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, sports teams.
So growing up, I actually had a lot of exposure to less traditional extracurriculars. So I was actually homeschooled until 5th grade. So up until then, I did like competitive cheer and dance. I was on a bowling league. I was, I think it was called HSD, like homeschool talent, where we did like Irish step dancing and acting. Like, listen, I probably didn't spend as much time on my academics, but I was like 10, okay? I didn't really know what I was doing. But the exposure to, the exposure to that kind of I think the mentality of it when I came out of that and went to public school and was kind of like more getting to know my peers, and even reflecting now, the biggest impact that had was just expanding my view of like all the things that you could do. Because but I think it's important to know that in whatever space you are in, there's going to be an infinite amount of ways you can interact with people or find your path, or kind of find the light at the end of the tunnel if it's, you know, a relatively darker time in your life. So I think that's the biggest impact that those things have had for me. And even, you know, now I look back and I'm like, oh, because I have this experience for this 1 month when I was 9, I now know how to do this and this weird project that's really niche. And like, it's really fun to realize that, oh, like I have those experiences that can help me forward in the future. And I think also in that expanding view, it's less so of like, I grew up identifying as a woman, so I have like this group of things I can be interested in, or this amount of things that I can be good at. It's more of like, I'm just good at it, you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. The mentality shift, I think, was the biggest thing that I got out of playing sports when I was younger. My parents kind of just like threw everything at me and just kind of hoped something would stick. So I ended up with lacrosse, basketball, and cross country. Those were my 3 sports in high school. But when I was younger, I was just having fun, right? I was just like living my best life. Just like, I didn't realize that like sports for women was just like kind of a new thing that was just like getting introduced to women. And it was kind of crazy that like the Boston Marathon, like the lady who like went and ran, like that was not that long ago. And to talk to like my mom about like her experience in sports and like my grandma's experience in sports, I feel like I was just so blessed to just like not have like anything holding me back in my head. And my parents like really set me up well for that. But I really like you, I was just like, I can do anything I want to, because like if I like work hard enough, like I know I can like make an impact in whatever space I'm in. So yeah, sports, very sports. Yeah, yay.
Well, thank you both. Winnie and G, how conscious are you of your gender identity in leadership? Does it impact the way you conduct your roles?
I love this question.
I don't know, but love it because I don't know. So go ahead.
So I think that it definitely depends on what role I'm in and who the people are around me, like what organization it is. And I think it definitely varies, because I was in a few roles a few years ago in ROTC, like Air Force ROTC. If you don't know what that is, it's like college/high school military stuff. Very, very male dominated. And I was on a leadership team of 9 people. I was the only girl, and the rest were guys who were also older than me. And that, I think, played such a pivotal point in my life that I don't shut up. I don't back down. Even they were all telling me like, oh, you're a girl, like you don't deserve to have an opinion on this. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And I won't keep my mouth shut. Like if I have an opinion about something, I'm gonna tell you. But also like at my leadership roles in college and at Kent, a lot of the positions are filled by women. And I think it's super interesting that going from college, whenever a lot of student leaders are women, and then going into like the workforce where it flips and then it's mostly men. Like I'm really confused as to where like the disconnect is, because student leaders in college, as I said, are mostly girls, and then it flips. But going back to the question, I think I'm more conscious of it in the way that like I think I am a woman, and maybe I could be intimidating to the men in the room because I do have a big personality. I can tend to be a little assertive, and I step into that. I don't shut down. I take that with power. So.
I would say for me, I don't know. I think it's still a tough one, because I think like until we started this discussion, until we started like this series, I've really never thought about gender and my leadership. Like I just thought I just lead. And I think a lot of my culture is in my leadership, but never gender. But I would say, I think just with that, I've just never felt, because maybe like when I supervise people, I know like when I was in Res Life, because I did my graduate school here at Kent, and I worked in resident services, and a lot of the RAs I was supervising were male. So now reflecting back, I think there were times where I did have to change my leadership style, just making sure that they didn't think of me as being too mean or just, like, but I also didn't want them to think of me as just easygoing, that they could just jump over me. So I think in that context, yes, but I think I just lead as like, I feel like I'm authentically myself. I bring my full self, and it's, what you see is what you get. So if you don't like what you see, well, bye. So yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one.
I like that answer.
Yes, thank you all for your thoughtful responses today. We're going to go around one last time. If you have any last words you'd like to leave with our audience. Yeah, please put that in.
I would just say, I think, like I just said, just be authentically yourself. Not everyone's not gonna like your leadership style or love your leadership style. So do what makes you happy. I think for me, I always think of my leadership style, as long as I'm getting the work done and I'm building, because I'm really intentional about building relationship. I don't want, like, my life for who I am, I don't like to be transactional. I don't want it to be like, we're just here. I want to make sure that even if, you're here for a certain time and you leave, I want you to be able to be like, oh my gosh, really? Like, let me reach out to her. Like, I like relationship. So lead as authentically as you are, but don't try to change your leadership style for people, because everyone's never going to like, they'll never be okay. So just do the best you can do and just keep it pushing. So yeah, that's my advice.
Okay. I definitely second that about like being authentically you, especially like if you do have intersecting identities or you're part of some marginalized community and people don't like it, too bad for them. That's not your problem. That's too bad for them. So like, don't hide parts of yourself just to get people to like you or respect you or something. And I think as much as it can be difficult to, like, if you are receiving criticism or people aren't listening to you, whatever the situation may be, that you're having some sort of negative feedback come back at you, to not shut down and keep pushing forward and like still keep your head up and be that confident leader, because that is partially what gains the respect of others, is that you do have that self-respect.
Ooh, I was just gonna add a little bit. It's just like, I think, because I don't think there's one way to lead. There's no clear cut. Like, everyone's different leadership styles work. I think you just have to kind of figure out what works for you and your team that you're leading, and try to kind of maneuver and work that into, because I think that kind of comes with who we are, being collaborative. So, but there's no one way to lead. Like, we can all lead differently, but as long as we're still achieving the goal at the end of the day, I really truly think that's what matters for me. Sorry.
Yeah, no, going off of that, just like play into your strengths and like your team strengths. I'm a very introverted person, so like me leading is not looking the same as someone who's insanely extroverted, right? But my friend who I was talking with said this quote one time, and I don't remember it, but she basically said that leadership is like ice cream. And not everyone is gonna like how you do it, the flavor. So you just have to be authentically yourself and try do your best. Yeah.
And I think kind of just, again, the same as everyone else. But it kind of, my feelings on the whole situation of like who I identify as in my leadership and as a woman in STEM is I always reflect back to a moment where I was called a ball buster. And but that's kind of like a coined term when it's like, I'm coming back because I need more tasks, I need more work because I'm getting my stuff done. And if that's what I am, then that's what I am.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the energy.
All right, now, here's responses. I'm going to turn it over to our audience. So do we have any questions for our panelists?
You know, I have questions.
Go Cassie.
That's my leadership. I'm asking. I was just gonna ask, I love that you all talked about different qualities in terms of your leadership, because I think we often think of leadership in a very stereotypical, gendered way. I say gendered way because you mentioned, or someone mentioned being bossy, like,
Yeah.
and that's being like you're leading, right? But for women, you're a bitch or you're a boss or you're like, where people who identify as men don't have, it's, you're taking charge, right? It's different. So I want to leave room for all of these qualities, ball buster, whatever, you know, I just want to say that out loud. But so if you were to say, and I want you to think outside the box. So certainly you can say, I take charge. All of those things are also on the table. What do you think you bring as a leader? What are the qualities that you bring as a leader? And I share that because I hear you say you're an introvert. And I had somebody in a presentation say, I'm a really good listener. And I thought we don't often think of that as a leadership quality, right? So I'm interested in what you would say you bring. And I believe in guidelines, not rules. So we're going to say whatever couple of things you want to bring, 1 to 3, 5, whatever you want to describe. What you think you bring as a leader in terms of qualities, and then what are some areas of opportunity that you want to lean into a little bit more, that you'd like to learn or practice or try out a little bit more that maybe isn't as comfortable for you. So that's a lot. And I finally got to the question. So
I can answer like the first half of it for now. I'm gonna need to think about the second half. Oh wait, I forgot what the first part was.
What are your qualities? What are your leadership qualities?
I think that I am very proactive about things. So like as soon as I like get an idea, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, let's have a meeting. Let's write all this stuff and we're doing this. Like, let's get it going. There's no time to waste. Like, let's go. Also, if I am like given any sort of task, usually I get a lot of tasks that I don't know what I'm doing on, and I will take that and be like, oh yeah, absolutely, I'm gonna do that 100%. And I figure it out and I do it and it goes well. So I think like being able to figure things out, as well as doing things in a creative way, I think it's really important, mostly because I can be a little lazy, to do things in the most efficient way possible. So finding out like the easiest and fastest way to do things also, I'm gonna have to think about the second one.
And the other thing while you're thinking of the second one is hearing what the answers are from other people and go like, yeah, that's an area I could learn more from. I'm going to talk to you after the presentation.
I'll go. I would say vibes and conflict management. While I was like on the lacrosse team, I feel like just like having a good aura, like positivity, bringing that to like every space that you're in is something that I really try to do. And then also, I forgot what
Conflict management.
conflict management. Yeah, so I like teammates would often come up to me with like issues that they were having within like inner team issues, outer team issues, like relationships. And I was just kind of like a person that would be there to listen, and then to kind of like point them in whatever direction they felt was best for them. I remember like one specific time I was asked to mediate a conversation between two friends because they were like fighting. So like I just like went in their room and just mediated the conversation. But yeah, I think that's something that I definitely bring to the environments that I'm in, but something that I definitely need to work on. I don't know. I would say I also like leaning into conflict. So like, yes, I can manage it, but like instigating it is like really makes me uncomfortable. So like being like, oh, hey, like you didn't do that, or like, can we like talk about this? When it's more like policy, like things that need to be done, I struggle. So like that professional sense and setting boundaries, that's what I need to work on.
But I do have to say, you leaned into some things you saw when you were on some teams and did some things to try to impact change. So you're already leaning into it as far as I can see in that regard. So
Thank
yeah, excellent.
I'll go. So qualities that I see myself being pretty successful at in leadership would be one, action plans. So if there's something that we think of and I'm like, all right, let's like, I'm on it. Like it could be 2 a.m. and I'm like, all right, well, I'm making an agenda. It's on my mind now and it's not going to get out until I write it down. And another thing is kind of going into that organization, I think. So especially with like KIC is kind of my biggest example. So there's a lot of us, there's 7 people on the board and each have their own whole section of the Constitution, like itemizing everything they need to do each semester. And it's overwhelming for one person. But then to kind of recognize that and I'm like, all right, well, talk to me, tell me exactly what you need to do, what's on your mind. I'll make a to-do list, again, I'll make an agenda, and then we can work through it together. I think that's kind of where I thrive at. I really enjoy, I always say like, throw whatever you need at me and I'll catch it. And that's you know, what I love to do. As for things that I want to work on, it's always confidence. Always, it always leads back to confidence. And if I have the answer, but yeah, just being confident in one, who I am, and that leads back to being confident in what I'm good at.
And that's practice, right?
Yeah.
Like the more you practice it and you're doing it, we joke around about showing up and like, I'm not sure that I know what I'm doing, but I can take this on, sure. How do I do this, right? Like, you know, that's cool.
Me? Oh, I work with Cassie, y'all. So I know she knows my answers before I say it. I would say something I think I'm good at is like, I think I'm good with like structure. I love structure, y'all. I like being organized and having all of that. But I feel like a place where I struggle, which I think comes with structure, is I feel like I could be more creative than I am. I don't tend to think outside of the box. I just want to get the work done. And I think for me, I think it's how I grew up. We always want to be the best out of the best. Like I want to go above and beyond and accomplish a certain fact. So I just wish I was more structured. I think I'm also good at giving grace, but I feel like that's also, I see that also in the negative light as well, because I think sometimes I give too much grace to people, which I think I need to start holding people more accountable. I think in my personal life, but also professionally as well. I know like when I was assistant call director, we realized like holding my areas accountable, like, you know, your bulletin board's not done. I was like, oh, but you're a student, you know, you have classes as well. Like you have, like, I always came up with excuse to excuse the bad behavior in a sense. But yeah, and I think conflict management too, it's still a struggle. I feel like I've taken so many classes on conflict management, but man, it's still like, I'm not there yet. So that's some of mine.
I came back to the second part, and I'm like the opposite of what you said, is that structure and organization for me is not a thing. I very much think of like the big ideas and like, oh my gosh, we should do this, and my brain goes like 10 times faster than like anything can actually happen. And then by the time I get the first 5 ideas down, then I forgot what the other 5 were. So I guess being more organized and structured for me, and maybe not going like so full steam ahead all the time. I tend to do that. Any other questions?
Yes, we have questions. All right, well, thank you all for being with us here today to discuss such an important topic. Can we give our panelists a round of applause? All right, as I mentioned earlier, today is part of a series focused on feminist leadership in college. Be sure to join us again on Monday, March 21st, so in 2 weeks, at 12 p.m. right here in the Leadership Center as we discuss the effects of stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination on gender representation in leadership. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.